Hi, my name's Emily Rose Adams. Welcome to Presently Presents.
When you throw the script away, you don't get a Q&A, you get a conversation. And that's what people really want to see. Authentic engagement and the kind that happens when you forget that you're even on a mic. Knowing your worth is not the same thing as being arrogant, and being self-aware isn't the same thing as putting yourself down. And not every day is going to be a good one, but I think as much as we can, we should be our own biggest fans.
Today's Presently Presents guest is a British Korean presenter, voiceover artist and adventurer who lives in London. She's worked with some huge companies, including the North Face, ESPN and Maserati. Her job has seen her travel the world, presenting at sporting events and also outdoor shows, where she's presented while rock climbing, hiking and even while wading through water. She's also interviewed some fascinating people, from world-class climber Alex Honnold to Hollywood star Awkwafina, and you'll also hear her voice in an upcoming wildlife docuseries. Today's Presently Presents guest is Sophia Jin. Hey!
Hi!
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. By the way, you have an amazing voice. No wonder you're doing newscasting and stuff like that. I thought you really switched it on there. It was amazing.
Oh, thank you. Coming from you, as I said in the intro, you're a voiceover artist as well. And we were just having before we click record, a little conversation that you're building your very own voiceover studio at home, which is amazing. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of got into it through presenting. And so because I already had that base, it was quite easy to look for voiceover representation. And I'd already got this job doing this docuseries for Animal Planet. So I knew that I was coming in with something. But I'm also able to do different accents and sort of strange voices and stuff, which is really helpful. And I speak Korean. So it's just kind of gone from there, really.
I love your voice. It sounds like you could do, I think I may have seen on Instagram as well, you were doing like a children's series or a book. And I can imagine for that audience, you've got a really lovely kind of bright tone to your voice.
I can't, it's really funny is that on my voiceover agents page with all their talent, I've never seen it before because I'd never done voiceover before, but they've described each voiceover artist by the tone of their voice. So it's like Sophia Jin, sparkly and intelligent, and they're just describing your voice. So yeah, I think that it worked really well for the children's audio book, although there were a few characters in there that I thought, I can't do. There was an Irish groundskeeper, and I was like, this is my voice doing this right now is a hate crime. I can't get the accent right.
That's hard. And I guess that, because there's different kinds of voiceover work. Obviously, the explainer video types, the kind of more corporate stuff, a lot of presenters will do. But the accents, characters, that's slightly more in the kind of acting side of things, isn't it? So I guess, do you do acting as well?
I do, yeah. I've got representation in TV and film, and it is my favorite type of voice acting to do is the characters and the animations. I actually did have a callback for a crazy Australian character yesterday, and so I stayed in character. I was doing sort of like method animation acting all day just to really stay in the accent, and that was really good fun.
Amazing. How do you find that shift, by the way, between acting and then going back to being yourself? Because it's quite different, isn't it? I used to do musical theatre, so I know I always felt like there was something kind of missing for me. Like, this doesn't feel right. I don't really like pretending to be someone else. And I realised I should have been presenting the whole time, because that's where it sort of feels most natural to me. How do you feel doing that shift? Is it quite strange sometimes?
It can be. I think especially with voice acting, it does mess my accent up for a bit. And I grew up in so many different places. I don't ever, I mean, a lot of third culture kids or mixed kids relate to this. I've heard so many people say it, that they don't feel like they really have a fixed accent. And so I feel like that's why I'm good at doing different accents, because I can simply just pick them up wherever I go, apart from the Irish groundskeeper. And it can be hard kind of coming back to yourself. But I also think that's the job is acting, isn't it? So you should be able to sort of switch it on and switch it off, and then come back to who you are. And I do have a strong sense of self.
And you mentioned that you can speak Korean. So did you live in Korea for a part of your life?
No, I never lived there. My mum is Korean and my dad is English, but he was born and raised in El Salvador in Central America. And I had so this is already quite a sort of culturally blended household. My parents met in Hong Kong. I was born in London, and then I moved to Shanghai when I was 6, and then Singapore. And I stayed in Singapore for 10 years and then moved back to London.
Amazing. So you've gained a lot of experience throughout the way.
Definitely. It's strange because sometimes, I don't really have friends that I've known since childhood from back home. And I think sometimes I miss that when I see it in other people. But at the same time, because I'm so used to moving everywhere and being from such a mixed background, that is quite freeing. I feel like I could go anywhere and make friends or sort of speak to anyone really and find some kind of common ground. So home really had to become a sense that I could acquire anywhere rather than just a fixed place. And I just think that really serves me in my presenting career as well.
Definitely, because that the ability to open those kind of conversations is just what you need, as you're probably aware, for interviews, being put on the
Mhm.
spot. That's a really good technique. It doesn't always come naturally to people. So the fact that you've kind of had to adapt and live in different environments is probably a great thing. And also, I was wondering, because I want to talk a bit about your adventure presenting. That's what drew me to you. I saw your show reel, and it was really one of the most epic show reels I've ever seen. You're like, firstly, like there's just stunning videos of you kind of hiking with nature. It looks amazing. But then there are bits where I think you're rock climbing and you're incredibly high. And as someone who's scared of heights, it's kind of my worst nightmare. But you were just incredibly relaxed about the whole thing. There's stuff with you like climbing through sort of waterfall looking areas. How did you get into that kind of presenting? Because it's such an unusual sort of niche within this industry. How did that come about?
Um, yeah, first I just want to get a shoehorn my way in there and say I think the clip that you're talking about, is that where there's sort of a big valley behind me and I'm sort of sitting on this metal rung and speaking. You see, I'm so desensitized to it that for me I was just like, yeah, it's just another clip. But recently I had another producer who saw my show reel. She picked out that exact clip and said the same thing. So this is good. I'm keeping that in there.
Yes.
But yeah, so adventure style presenting, it really just came from the fact that I'm already interested in it. I mean, I
Mhm.
already do it. I love the outdoors. I love sports. And to be honest with you, it was never really that I necessarily wanted to present in that area. And I do still see myself as being very versatile and able to speak about many different things. But it's also true that there aren't many people doing that. And there aren't many young women doing that either.
Mhm.
So sort of the way that I got started was that I always had kind of one foot in, one foot out of university, and I was always sort of trying to save up money from a part-time job to go stay in hostels in places that were sort of outdoorsy. And I'd always film myself doing stuff. And that actually formed the basis for my first show reel and helped me get my first agent. And so the majority of the footage of me that was already out there was of me doing all this outdoorsy stuff and doing sports. And so that's kind of where I found my niche.
So would you say that you kind of started off as like a content creator and you made that happen? Because there's a lot of people who we know who sign up at Presently and they ask us questions about, I don't have a show reel, but I'm good on camera and I want to be able to do something. And I always say, look, you don't have to necessarily pay a show reel company to create one. You can go out there and do that. And this is an example of you definitely doing that. So is that how
Mm-hmm.
it all came about? You kind of thought of an idea, right? Would be a great place to shoot something. Let's go and do it.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I never even thought that I was going to do anything on social media. I've always had very diverse interests, and I went through so many obsessive phases growing up. I said, I'm going to be a scientist. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. And I realized that the common denominator between all these things I was interested in was that I love to communicate them. I love to speak. And I mean, I was actually heavily involved in debate growing up. And so I was really channeled all my energy into talking. And my parents were the ones who said, you'd either be a great barrister or a presenter. And I tried interning at a law firm and I hated it. And I said, it's presenting for me. And so that's kind of where I started. I've also always loved writing. And so my first job straight out of university. I did literature at King's. My first job was at Condé Nast Traveler. And so I was assisting the editorial team. And so while I was writing, I thought, I want to get into presenting. That's the dream. And so you're absolutely right in that. I think kind of where anyone can start now is that you can make your own content. And that is the great thing about social media. It has its downsides, but it has really given us the opportunity to take control of our narratives and present ourselves the way that we would like to be seen, advertise our skills, and signal to others what kind of work we'd like to be doing. And I've got a lot from doing that, from creating content and then putting it out there.
Amazing. And I think it's often the people who use their initiative and create their brand and create their content who get recognized and land these jobs. Because I noticed on Instagram, you've got like 100,000 followers, and not only have you got that many followers, they're all very engaged. I mean, everything you're posting gets a lot of great feedback. You're putting stuff on YouTube. Is that something that you did alongside your career as it grew, or did one lead to the other, if that makes sense?
A little bit of both, to be honest. I think that, I think the audience came first. I did build a platform on social media first, and that was what caught the attention of my first agent. It was a brilliant way to advertise, my personality, because as a presenter, our personality is often the product. So yeah, it's kind of, I say the audience did come first, and they've kind of grown together for sure.
And do you find, I mean, with having that kind of following, are there sort of pressures that come with it day to day? So are you thinking, oh, I've got to get some content out there, I want to grow it? Or are you kind of just doing it in a relaxed way where you kind of just create content as and when it feels right to you?
This is interesting, because this has been on my mind a lot lately, and I think a lot of people in this position might be able to relate, but it started out as just being relaxed. And I was just doing it for fun. And now there does feel like a little bit of pressure to put certain pieces of content out, especially because I have a brand deal and I feel like there are certain expectations. And so I'm trying to let go of that, because it's quite a common thing that happens with creators. They build this audience and this brand, and people like them for that. And then they start to feel the pressure, and things maybe start to change, or then perhaps not as relatable anymore. So I'm trying to make sure that doesn't happen. I want to just be the same as I've always been. But it's definitely, it's not easy. And I think, especially as a creative, social media can be really creatively stifling, and it's really hard not to conflate your worth as an artist with the numbers that you see on there, because a lot of us are we put so much of ourselves into our art and our creativity. And it's really hard to not think that we're not as valid or great of artists or creators when the numbers just simply aren't there. But you can't create just for an algorithm. And so I think that's quite, it's a thing that a lot of us are dealing with.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because sometimes also when you're working on these jobs, if you're booked for a shoot, or you're working in a studio, and if you want to be laser focused, and I find that the last thing I want to be doing is documenting it for myself or taking pictures. I feel like for me it takes so much sort of focus, and I guess for you, if you're presenting an outdoors piece, you don't have an auto cue, you don't have an earpiece, you're remembering scripts. So there's a lot going on in those moments, and sometimes you leave and you forget, oh, I didn't actually take any extra behind the scenes footage, and I feel like I've missed an opportunity to post it on Instagram, which is sometimes I feel a bit frustrated when that happens, because as you're right, you feel like there's almost a pressure to kind of get those numbers going up, and sometimes we just put these pressures on ourselves, and no one else is really expecting it from us. Yeah. we all live in the social media world now, don't we? But I noticed, so I would say your social media it looks what you would, if you looked at it for the first time, you would see that you're an adventure, outdoorsy person, and you love sport. Is that something you want to continue with? So you've sort of found your niche now. Is that where you see your kind of future developing into?
I don't want to just do that. I don't want to just be pigeonholed into that. And I feel like I do a good enough job of showing different sides to me and sort of different skills and capabilities. Certainly, I've had work that has been nothing to do with adventure. And so I would definitely like to do more in that area because I do really enjoy it. But I think the thing for me is to make sure that I'm not limited to that. And I want to be genre defying. I want to not be limited to just one thing because I know that I can do so many different things. And so just for example, like some of the future things I'd love to do is to produce and front my own docuseries and my own shows. I'm really interested in what happens on both sides of the camera, and I think having a foot in the creative process is so valuable and so empowering. So that's really where I want to end up, because at the moment I've been hosting things for other people and interviewing the people that people want me to interview and things like that. But I think really the goal for me is to get to the point where I feel like I have the experience. I certainly have the ideas. I'm not short on ideas. But yeah, to produce my own.
Amazing. And I think there's many presenters out there who just are interested in being on camera. I'm always advocating for doing stuff behind the scenes as well, because I feel like you just feel more like, I don't know, if you're doing reporting and things like that, you can just talk about it for hours if you've actually studied the topic and you've written content about it. So do you feel the same? So if you're on camera and you've written that script yourself, do you feel like you can kind of give it more conviction than if someone had said to you, right, I want you to memorize this?
I think I can give both the sort of same level of conviction, at least outwardly, but internally there's something that happens, when it's your baby, inside you feel different. And I just think having creative control is again, it is just so empowering. And I do have so many ideas. There are so many things that I'm so passionate about. And I'd love to be able to see them brought to life, hopefully with my help.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess for you, you're quite used to creating content. If you wanted to create your own show or come up with an idea, how do you think you would start by doing that? Because it's often about pitching, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, I'm actually in the process of doing that at the moment, and I have had to ask for guidance because I've never done it before, and I'm really not sure on the process, and so it's a lot of building the pitch deck and really fleshing it out, so much more detail than I ever thought I need to give. And then it's just about sort of finding people to take it on, really, and having good people and a good team, looking for corporate sponsors as well. So many aspects to the process I never considered, and I'm glad to now. It's really good to get an insight into how all of that stuff works.
Mm-hmm. I feel like also the adventure stuff, I know you said you'd like to do all different and you've got many passions, but with that kind of outdoors, nature, adventure niche, it's something that the world probably needs more education around, and there's not enough of that kind of content that we're seeing. So, I mean, personally, I think I would love to see more content, and something of your own would be great to see as well. So when you're doing that kind of style of stuff, do you ever feel like you're in a position, so you've done like obviously rock climbing, as we were talking about before, you've done hiking. Have there ever been any moments where you've sort of felt a little bit out of your comfort zone with nature?
Out of my comfort zone, not when filming, no, because it's prepared, it's not necessarily designed to make me feel really unsafe. I have obviously been scared. I've been nervous at times for sure. I think, some of my favorite filming moments are always the crazy outdoors ones. And there was one where I was basically exploring Switzerland and showing the, extreme outdoors adventure side to it. And I think it would be quite funny for people to know that you've got to do, multiple takes sometimes where we can as well. And there was this one huge bungee jump. And I did that thing like 5 times back to back, because the first time they said, "Oh, Sophia, we didn't really get the shot we want. Can we just winch you up and you go again?"
No.
And I thought, oh my God, it was terrifying to me. It felt so unnatural to jump off something that high. But I think by the end of that filming block, I no longer felt adrenaline like a normal person. I could just go again and again. So there are definitely times that, yeah, I felt, you know, nervous and scared. But I don't think in the process of filming things, no one's ever pushed me to not feel safe or to be out of my comfort zone. I'm always kind of doing stuff that I want to do.
I think bungee jumping 5 times in a day would be way out of most people's comfort zone. So I think you find this whole sort of area a lot more relaxing than probably most people would. Is that something you did as you were growing up, by the way? Did you do like outdoor activities a lot?
No, I didn't. I didn't have an outdoorsy upbringing, and I was just always fascinated by the natural world. And so all these sort of, I kind of touched on it, but I was obsessed with different careers, and a lot of them were to do with science. And I said, I'm going to be a geologist or an astrophysicist or a marine biologist. And I always thought that I would end up sort of working in that field. But also, I really, really loved art and felt quite split between art and science. But no, it wasn't an outdoorsy upbringing. My parents often joke that they brought the wrong baby back from the hospital. And you know what? If I wasn't so obviously mixed race, I would have thought the same because we're so different.
Oh, it's amazing. But I mean, it's a good job because, as I said, with me, I was recently away on holiday in Thailand, and I was pretty much the only one in the group who wouldn't do the crazy zip wiring because I was too scared. So me as an adventure presenter would just not work. So yeah, I'm fascinated hearing these stories, and as I said before, seeing your footage is just it's very exhilarating to watch. But for me personally, I wouldn't be able to do it. But yes, you've also, I've seen other bits and bobs of you interviewing quite a lot. So you've spoken to lots of sort of high profile sports people, some Hollywood actors. How did those kind of roles come about for you?
That has been that's mostly film press, actually, film press junkets. So for documentaries or for Disney. Yeah, that's mostly been that. But then obviously sometimes a little bit of broadcast as well. Like the broadcast I was doing for ESPN, I was interviewing athletes as they were coming off the can't tell what word for it. It's not
The
the
ring?
quads, the ring, what have you, whatever that is. The coming away from the action, just grabbing them and
Yes.
speaking to them then, and that was really intense actually. And I've done interviewing for live events as well. I've really enjoyed that. So yeah, it's been quite a diverse range of interviewing.
How do you keep your cool in those moments? Because it can be quite nerve wracking when you've got just a few seconds sometimes and you're just trying to grab a great answer from one of these amazing athletes who are coming off and you've got
Yeah.
just a minute with them. How do you kind of keep your cool and stay focused?
See, that was the most challenging one for me so far. I think sports presenting is really something I respect because you need to understand what you're looking at. You need to know exactly what's going on, and then seconds later, when it's done, you're pulling that person off the pitch or the ring or whatever, and then you have to ask them about it. And I think I was so stressed before doing it, but then when you're in the action and it is just happening around you, you have got to be so present. I didn't really have a choice, and so that I think really that was it for me. Is that the sheer pace of that is really what kept me from losing it. I couldn't be anywhere else. I had to be there, and eventually, as you do it more and more, you get more used to it, and then you really truly find yourself being absorbed in the action, and yeah, and then you just take it from there.
That's great. I guess with the sports stuff, when you're literally picking them up as they're on their way out, you're
Mm.
kind of almost absorbing their adrenaline, I guess. So that's quite a
Yeah.
different style. I've also seen you've done a lot of like sit down interview stuff
Mhm.
for that kind of environment. How would you prepare for that? Do you kind of get a list of questions? How would you
Mm.
kind of get ready?
So my first tip is that there is no one size fits all approach to conducting an interview because everyone is different and you're not going to ask the same thing of every person. But there are some standard things that I do like to do before an interview, and then the rest of it comes down to my interviewee. So I do my research on the person or the project because obviously you need a base level of knowledge, or potentially a lot of knowledge depending on the level of expertise that the job requires. And then the next thing is being able to make someone feel comfortable enough to really open up to you. And to be honest, you can work on this and you can develop it, but this is also a quality that some people just innately have. And you've met these people, you know, and you find yourself just being compelled to tell someone stuff, and they're really easy to talk to. That is a quality that some people do just have. And then there are things that can help with that, like making sure that you're calibrating yourself to your subject. So you got to meet them where they're at. If they're not super comfortable, matching their energy and their mood, even their body language, their style, not necessarily all the time, but it can definitely help make someone feel more comfortable if they have a sense of a very evenly matched conversation. And then another thing for me is abandoning the script. So personally, I don't love to use notes or a script or cue cards in interviews. I've prepared before, and so I've really prepared, and then I've kind of thrown it out the window because I think when you throw the script away, you don't get a Q&A, you get a conversation. And that's what people really want to see. Authentic engagement, and the kind that happens when you forget that you're even on a mic. That is something real. So if I can, I would say, you know, throw the notes away, because that's where the magic happens.
Amazing. Have you got any examples of people that you've interviewed where you've really felt that kind of coming into play, where you haven't really needed to think too much about what you prepared and it's all just flowing?
100%. I mean, I did host an event for the North Face in Chamonix last year, and I actually had cue cards for this event. They were very kindly prepared for me by Cut Media, and I absorbed them. And then I think I looked at them about once or twice because the conversation was just flowing so well. I had a guide to the side of the camera, you know, sort of telling me when my time was up and when I needed to move on to the next section. But it was easy to tell what it was because it was sort of on the board behind us, sort of, you know, this mountain, then that mountain, that kind of thing. And it went so well because it was flowing, because it was a conversation. It was delivered in a Q&A style, but it didn't really feel like it. And I had the freedom to be spontaneous. And for me, I'd say a lot of my presenting style is funny. I really like to find, even when it's a serious topic, I love to bring a sense of humor into it and like play in that area between. And so for me, even talking about, you know, the person I was interviewing is David Gottler. He's a famous alpinist. Even talking about sort of this death-defying ascent on Everest, you know, there's still joy and humor to be found in that. And so I was sort of able to do that because I was liberated from the script.
Hey folks, Emily here, and I'm interrupting this fascinating conversation to remind you that if you want access to the best jobs in the industry, there's no better way to find them than to sign up to Presently. There you can create a free profile page and then subscribe to start applying for the most exclusive jobs for presenters, voiceover artists, and more. And right now we're offering a 14-day free trial, so check it out. That's presently.com. And now back to our conversation. So you've worked obviously as a presenter for a while now, and I guess like all of us, you experience the regular sort of highs and lows. Have you ever had any moments of kind of self-doubt along the way where you've questioned your abilities or you've kind of felt nervous? Is that something you've ever had to try and overcome?
100%. And everybody does. And I'm really glad to get an opportunity to talk about this because I think especially in your early career stages, sometimes you get a string of jobs or wins in one go, and that feels amazing. But sometimes that isn't, and that can feel really awful. And those gaps in between are purgatory, and it's really easy for self-doubt to creep in. And that is something that every artist at every level deals with because risk-taking and instability is inherent to an artistic life, and some element of that will always be there. Now, I've got friends who have quote unquote made it, sort of like almost household name style, and now their worry is keeping it. I mean, I've watched them sort of fight to get jobs, and now that they're kind of more recognized in their industry, they are worried about keeping it and that it disappears tomorrow. So I'm not saying this to discourage anyone from pursuing their dreams or an artistic life. I mean, go for it. And, you know, when you do, go for it with your whole heart. I just don't want to present as if it doesn't have any challenges because, like everything, it does. And you will encounter a lot of self-doubt. And so for me, the way that I've overcome some of those moments is firstly to have good people around me. And it's something that I said recently in a post that, it would be nice to feel like you could do it alone, but the truth is that you need people. The times that other people have revived my belief in myself when things get hard are never lost on me. And I think that is the key to most things in life, is to just have good people around you. And also, it's easier said than done. Firstly, remembering that it's a marathon, not a sprint. If these things take time. And it was the thing that my first agent said to me was, you're not going to be presenting your own show overnight. You really do have to build up over time. And I kind of want to direct my next bit towards women especially. And this is kind of just not even for work or for presenting, but life generally. Really, really believing in yourself and really backing yourself. Because when I was younger, I often heard women being apologetic or putting themselves down. And I hear it less now, but when I do, it still comes from my female friends. And I think there's an expectation that we mustn't think too highly of ourselves, because it could be conceited or arrogant. But why? Like, why am I supposed to act like I don't think I have a great personality and a strong CV and amazing tits? Knowing your worth is not the same thing as being arrogant, and being self-aware isn't the same thing as putting yourself down. And not every day is going to be a good one, but I think as much as we can, we should be our own biggest fans. I believe you should think highly of yourself. A lot of bullshit is going to have a lot less power over you when you do, and this world is going to try and box you in enough as it is without you making yourself even smaller. So if you're going to go for it, go for it. Figure out what your skills are, lean into them, connect with people, believe in yourself, and rely on the good people around you, and that can really see you through those times.
Wow, so many words of wisdom. Amazing, amazing advice. I think it not only is it good for your own personal growth, because obviously everything you said there is good just for your day-to-day life, but also career-wise, it can be the difference between making it and not making it, is having that internal strength and self-belief at those moments where you almost sometimes want the ground to swallow you up. Having that extra internal strength and belief is so important. So I think that's a really important topic that you've covered there.
Yeah, and it can be lonely, can't it? I mean, it's just like we're our own business essentially, and especially sort of in the adventure side of things, that is such a male-dominated industry. And so for me as a woman, it's been, you know, it can be hard. I've sort of felt like I've had to do away with many aspects of myself in order to fit in, but really, I know that I have a unique value, and that is, it's all the things that make me me. I need to keep those things. So, yeah.
Well, I guess obviously to get to where you are now with your career, and maybe in the next 10 years to where you'll be down with your career further down the line, I'm sure, like many of us, you've had to juggle all sorts of different things. You live in London, it's one of the most expensive cities in the world. How do you kind of balance that? So you're doing acting, voiceover work, and presenting. That sounds like quite a lot going on.
Yeah, I think when people hear what I do, at first it sounds a bit incongruous. There's the sort of the main things are presenting and voice acting, and then I guess like climbing and being outdoors, because I do that with the North Face. And for me, it actually does all come under the same umbrella of storytelling and being creative and curious. And that's where everything I do begins. Everything I do begins in that place of creativity and curiosity. And that's the link between all of those things. And I think we're moving away from the company man era of work and into more of this kind of Renaissance era where you can do and be so many different things. And I think the idea that we can't be more than one thing is archaic. And I think it especially doesn't work for creatives like myself or like you, who feel so drawn to the art of storytelling that we want to pursue it across all its different forms. We shapeshift across these different disciplines, from sort of acting and presenting, filmmaking, or music. And I know many people who do that, and many people who do that successfully. And I don't think that means that your focus is diluted across them all. There was one time I encountered one manager who suggested that perhaps, I should just commit to just voice acting or whatever, and just choose my lane and stick to it. And I don't think that works. I disagree. It's I don't see people doing that. I think we're more and more empowered to do different things. And I'm not 25% a presenter. I'm not 25% a voice actor. When I show up to the studio or wherever I'm hosting, I'm 100% that thing that I need to be that day. And I think that there's, especially in the early stages of your career, really actually any point in your life, but I think especially when you're younger and in your 20s like I am, there is such a pressure to make the right set of decisions,
Mm-hmm.
put on us by the world, but also we put it on ourselves, and
Yeah.
easier to do with sort of, social media. And but when I get really caught up in that, and I'm like, am I doing the right thing? What is the right place to live, or the right job to do? You can always change. I always
Mm-hmm.
forget that you can always change, and I think about how many changes I've sort of made just in the last couple of years, and really you should just go for it. You should go do the move or change the job. If you don't like it, you can change it. You can always change. And if you fail, good on you because you tried. So that's how I approach these things.
That's a really great attitude to have. I think being flexible, fluid, and grabbing opportunities when they arise, even if it's not exactly what you've been doing over the last year. I've done a lot of that throughout my life, and I think it's a more exciting way to live because things are a bit more varied. But with the voiceover work, I know we did speak about it already a little bit at the start of the podcast, but would you recommend for other presenters? Because we on Presently do get several voiceover jobs popping up. And I noticed that they get fewer applications than the presenting jobs that we get, predominantly because a lot of our members are more presenters than they are voiceover artists. But would you recommend other people to give that a go as well?
I'd say so. I think, a degree of self-awareness is a good thing, and you can kind of tell if you have a good voice for it or not. For a long time, people did tell me that I had a clear voice that would be really good for documentaries and things like that. But I do also have the sort of full range of voice acting stuff where I can do the crazy voices as well and the different accents. And so for me, I kind of knew that it would be a good thing to do, and have a language as well. So I think, yeah, you should think about it. Consider your voice. I know it's a horrible thing to do. Most people hate to listen to their own voices, um, but yeah, I do think it's a very valid, it's a very valid option for you. I think a lot of presenters do have really good voices, and so it's definitely something you should look into.
Yeah, and I guess like commercials in particular, things like that. I've done a few commercials along the way, and I mean it's quite astounding actually the pay you can get, the pay difference you can get to doing
Oh, yeah.
other filming jobs or one day things here and there. That kind of work can really pay, and I guess when you're living in tough times like we all are in London and busy and kind of expensive cities across the UK, I guess landing those jobs here and there can really just ease the pressure and give you more time to kind of focus. Because I guess some of these voiceover jobs, they might just be like half a day or a few hours rather than like a long project that you have to commit to for months.
Yeah, they often are. And do you know what? The commercials are what you want. They're always what you
Mm-hmm.
want, even with like fashion modeling and stuff. You want the campaigns, you want the commercials. I mean, I've done really long voiceover jobs. I mean, like the Animal Planet thing, that was a commitment over a period of months and showing up to the studio and sort of voicing over the episodes. And I've also done stuff that's shorter, and commercial. Everyone wants a commercial. I mean, think about the lady who says because you're worth it for L'Oreal, the buyout on that,
Oh my word.
the buyout fees, that's where it's at.
Yeah, definitely. Don't some voiceover artists get paid by the word?
It's absolutely insane. I think I was talking to a friend of mine who's a comedian. Quite a few comedians do a lot of voiceover work as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd done like a cinema voice years ago, and he said it was the most amount of money he ever got paid for the least amount of work he'd done.
Amazing. I think after this conversation, I'm sure a few more people will be working on their voiceover demos at home. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely it's good fun as well. It's one of those things where I think just using your voice and it's all kind of linked. I mean, I do find that it's I don't feel if I'm not doing an acting voiceover, if it's more of a commercial type or a corporate one or a video explainer, it's basically presenting, but just not with a camera in front of you
Hmm.
sometimes for me. So I feel like it makes sense to tie the two together sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of the way to see voiceover actually. Is unless it's very hard to do voiceover full time to be a
Mhm.
voice actor. That's really competitive. I mean, you've noticed sort of in your favorite animated shows like all the characters are voiced by the same person. So I
Yeah.
think it's a very nice supplementary income for presenters, and presenters also have a very good sense of pacing, and so it's quite natural for us to, when given with a script, to know what words to emphasis and where to do the pauses and things like that. So I
Mhm.
think, yeah, it's great. Commercials would be great for presenters.
Yeah, good advice. Good advice. Hopefully we'll get some more voiceover applications on Presently now. So what would you say has been the best thing about presenting for you? You've been doing it for a while. You've had some really exciting and unique opportunities. What's kind of been the best thing that kind of having that kind of platform's given you?
The Yeah, well, the best thing about presenting is that the platform that it's given me to really commit to causes that I care about.
Hmm.
I think if you have any kind of platform, big or small, then to align yourself with the cause is a really good thing to do, because there is power behind role models. And I think for
Hmm.
me, I've been able to become an ambassador and work with charities that I really care about. And one of those is Ella's. And I just want to give a shout out to Ella's because they're amazing. They're a small London based organization, and they work to support women who've survived trafficking and
Hmm.
exploitation. And that's kind of just, they help with all aspects of building back a safe, happy, independent life, whether that's help with legal work or learning English or being educated and being able to get a job. I mean, it's really a great thing that they do, and I was only sort of able to connect with them through the platform that I had and the connections I'd made, and something I really care about. And sort of, so yeah, the advocacy side of things, I
Hmm.
suppose, because there are just so many things I care about, and it's been really empowering to have the voice and now the resources to talk about those things.
So how would you share those kind of sort of topics that you're interested about, or like charities that you want to support? Is that something you would share online with your followers?
Yes, exactly. So I think social media is kind of the easiest way to do it. And then there are fundraising challenges I could do. And for me, those tend to be sort of like sports based things.
Hmm.
And at the moment, I'm actually working on bringing Ella's and the North Face together. So I'm
Mm.
trying to organize a sort of outdoors trip for some of the survivors that they work with, and getting North Face's funding behind that and support. And then we'll hopefully make a short film about it. And so that's sort of a really nice example of being able to look at your network and your corner of the world and see what kind of difference you can make. Because I'm so addicted to the news. I am plugged in constantly. I get so overwhelmed. Like, how am I going to solve all of this? But,
Yes.
it's really, you have to just kind of downsize and deconstruct and just look at what you can do in your little community, in your little pocket of the world. And yeah, make a difference in that way.
That's really lovely to hear. Sophia, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really want to keep up to date with what you're doing. So, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, I feel like you've got some really exciting developments on the way. So, where can we follow you?
Ooh, that's lovely. I am found on Instagram on the handle at SOFJIN underscore, Sofjin underscore. Sophia Jin on YouTube. I got the same Twitter as well, actually, Sofjin underscore. So yeah, that's me, Sofjin.
Amazing. And what are you doing with your YouTube? Because there's quite a lot of stuff on there. Are you going to be producing some more content?
I would like to, but YouTube is difficult. I respect consistent content creators on YouTube because it's hard. I mean, it's like I realize I'm really good at being on camera and speaking and just all that other stuff. I mean, the editing. Oh my God, the editing
Yes.
is really difficult. So ideally, I put some more stuff out there. At the moment, it's kind of just like every
Hmm.
month or every couple months, and it's a nice supplement to Instagram. It's nice to say hello to people once in a while with my face in motion. And hopefully, I do more. I do have some quite interesting things coming up. I'm collaborating with some pretty cool tourism boards. So hopefully, there's going to be more opportunities to take people along on my adventures virtually.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Well, I will definitely be keeping up to date with all of the adventures that you've got planned. And it's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for offering advice in so many different areas. I feel like we covered a lot of topics, which was really great. So
Yeah, thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.